Let's discover the power of using gray oil paints to create a beautiful portrait painting. I'm Nathaniel Skousen. I paint portraits, landscapes, still lifes in oils and watercolor. What I love about being a painter is the opportunity to continually grow and experiment with materials. There's nothing quite like the feeling of when a painting is going well. It's all about choosing the right materials and having the paints work for you. In this video, I'll be using Maimeri Puro oil paints. Let's talk a little bit about the portrait and kind of what the subject matter is here. So here is this beautiful young girl, Western attire, and my goal here was to, get this setting sun, this little bit of warmth out here on her face, and then I got this blue light coming in from right behind. And let's go ahead and start putting in some of the colors that I was able to establish and just placing them in. And I want this to be thin, just washing in these colors. The reason why I start with this more purpley blue color is because I want to really have a cool feel to the painting overall. And then with the flesh, I can have that little bit of chromatic turn to help it feel like it's coming towards me and the proper form that I need. And so what I tend to do is say, let's put this first wash closer to my finished product, like where I'm headed. And then based on that premise, I can always add my little rich orangey brownish colors later. So let's go ahead and establish some skin tone. Your first layer is going to be a little bit tricky because you have to stain it, but you're going to see some of the underpainting come through. But here's the difficulty with painting. Is you go in, you put in a layer, and maybe you just put it in as a wash. And then you see these brush marks. And they're so very frustrating. And then maybe you smooth this out, and you're like, I'm good to go. And then it dries, and the next day you have these lines in there. So on these first layers, there is a sense of, I really need to put down thick paint to hide all these lines that'll show up later. And remember, if you're starting from white, for me, it's pretty much 4 layers. 4 layers have to be done to truly hide that canvas underneath. When I go to the museums, I don't look at a Bouguereau, I don't see canvas. You just don't. So that's my thought with academic painting, is work hard to hide the white of the canvas. So with this step right here, I would continue through the shirt. I would add these types of this light value, purple. And let me just put 2 colors together, just to maybe 3 of these really darks, just to show how dark this vest needs to be. And this is really high chroma right here. But this is strictly, and like I say beforehand, a lot of times I like to go in and just put that wash, and then I can cut to the chase, and I don't have to struggle with the painting underneath. Because even with this, even if I neutralize how chromatic that was, I'm still going to have little bits of area where I can see the canvas, like I was talking about earlier. All right, so let's just paint off camera if you guys are okay with that. And I'm going to put in a couple more strokes. And so let me just show you here what we've been able to do. And basically, you can see these colors, and you can just slightly lighten them, just to catch you up where we got to. See, we can wash in this background. This has been washed in. We have the sky with this color. Put it in. And nothing looks right until the whole canvas is covered. That's where we're at right here. So I am going to use a watercolor brush. And what I like this watercolor brush for is using oil colors, oil paints, to some degree like a watercolor. Thin, more of washes. It's not going to be wet though. I'm not going to run some kind of wash down this. But I am going to just start to put in my basic foundational grays on top of what I've already accomplished here. And it's just to help me just get this form established. So now let's come on up into this area. Right here is where the main form is most important. And so what I'm going to do is use this Robert Simmons round sable number 6. And I'm going to start gathering highlight material in here that I want to place. I'm not just making the highlight light, I'm making it chromatic. If I just make it light and just go for a gray, well, there you go. And maybe I'm just going for a gray blue, but I need it to be the right chroma. So I don't need it to be those, I need it to be in the flesh side, higher chroma. Painting flesh is difficult because you have to have a certain amount of red grays, you have to have a certain amount of orange grays, and I have an excellent yellow gray just by mixing some of these grays into my golden ochre. And then maybe I need it a little bit lighter, so I have those pre-mixed. It needs a little bit of darker up on this edge. I want it to feel like it's turning up into an eye, the eye area. Now for this to read correctly, I need to establish this. For this to read correctly, I need to establish this. So you're always thinking 2 steps over from the neighbors. Because if I were to leave that white canvas and I was just painting up to here, this would all look really, really dark. And so I'm just going to quickly establish what these colors would be in my best estimation. I'm going to grab this Venetian red and mix it into some of these original colors. In a sense right here, I'm graying that Venetian red down. It comes back to the idea of reaching over for your complementary colors on the other side of the color wheel. And so it is graying, but it's not gray. Just an idea, just an idea. Don't hang up on that one too much, but when you're dumbing down a color, however you use it, your goal is to gray it down. Okay. And then there's a bit of a warm stretch through here as that form turns and it falls out of the shadow and there's warm light hitting it. And it just allows us to feel that quite well. And as I fix this hair, eventually I'm going to come in here and add some even darker areas. And so painting is a series of progressions. I am moving along, I'm correcting my mistakes. I do one layer, I make all the layers as correct as possible. I go to the next layer, I correct all those, but you're never getting everything correct until that layer is done. And that's why I'm saying here needs to be correct, here needs to be corrected, here needs to be corrected. On the next layer, I'll correct them better, better, better. Let's go with my watercolor hairbrush. How fun is that? I'm warming up those areas that I promised to warm up later. If these are too warm now, this will never read correctly. I want to save warming these up for later. Let's try a little bit of gold ochre mixed in here. So at least I have these areas better established. Let me see if I can, let's go with this Venetian red with one of these darker values in here. Because as I made this correct, now I can see, if you want to just really zoom in here, I can see through here, all this doesn't look right anymore. Because once I got this neighbor done and this neighbor done, now the middle where I thought was correct doesn't look correct. And that's where we need to think finish layers, finish areas, and that's how you understand whether you are heading in the right direction or not. So the interesting thing with painting is that you have to think, you know, I paint into my drawing, then the drawing has to come back, and they keep meeting back and forth till they meet in the middle and you're correct. And so this is the stage where you're intruding on the other person's area and you slowly find a way to meet in the middle. And it's the same principle with continually building up the form and putting in the proper grays. You're going back and forth between chroma and grays till you finally meet right where you want it. So let's go ahead and take it to the next stage to show you, as this painting has advanced, how we finish up with the details and go from there. So we have been working on this form layer, getting the form described properly, and really having fun with the hair. You know, getting this watercolor brush, running all these little lines and strokes, not worrying about the details too much. That's what this step is for. This is a study. This is going to become a big painting. She's going to be in front of a mesa. She's going to have these big, these big wood slats from the fence coming up behind her. But for the functionality of this demo, it's to talk about form, it's talk about colors, it's talk about utilizing and incorporating grays into your painting. So we've done most of that. Now it's just, let's go in here, let's go do the fun stuff, put in the little details, and wrap it up. And so let's go ahead at this point and think, if I wanted to add a few interesting darks and interesting lights, maybe define some of these edges through here, what would I use? And so when I add these darks, I'm trying to be careful of these skin tones, because if I want these skin tones to read right, I can't have these go too dark, or else they're just not going to show up anyways. Now I'm just going to work on these buttons. I'm just going to see what this brush can do for me. I'm not thinking about what is the highest bristle on the brush. I'm thinking about, when I go and place a mark, what the brush does. And then if that mark is a certain shape, a certain characteristic, then I use what the brush is giving me, and I continue to use that shape of the brush. I'm mostly just trying to put in the minimal details and just make the painting stand on its own. Well, thanks for following along, and I hope this will help you understand paints, how to incorporate grays into them, and how to utilize them in your paintings.